Hi all. So we are starting a new unit. We've decided to go back and review factoring before we move on to rational functions. So we're just going to review factoring really quickly in this one lesson for you guys. We're going to review hopefully all the types of factoring that you're going to need to do before we start rational functions. Again, if you have any questions, you can go to the discussion section of this unit and ask any questions that you may have. Make sure that they're detailed and just don't say I don't get it. Please make sure that you're very specific in your questions so that we can answer those questions. And then and then also make sure that you're reading the threads to make sure that you're not asking the same question over again, so that we can keep them in different threads, so we're not answering the same questions over again. Sorry, I know that I've said that again, but more than once, but that's what we're trying to avoid. So here we're gonna go ahead and factor now. It says write an equivalent expression by factoring out the greatest common factor. So basically what I want to know is what number goes into both 8y squared and 20. So what goes into both 8 and 20? Well, 4 does. So if I take a 4 out of 8y squared, I get left with 2y squared, because 4 times 2 is 8. And 4 goes into 20 5 times. Remember, factoring is just unmultiplying, right? So I want to, if I multiply my 4 back through, I should get this answer here. So 4 times 2 is 8, and 4 times 5 is 20. Great. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one. It's got 3 terms. I'm still doing the same thing. I want to find out what goes into 9y squared plus 3x plus 3. So I need to find out what goes into 9, 3, and 3. Well, we know that 3 does, and that there's no variables in that are the same, so I'm just going to factor a 3 out. So 3 goes into 9, 3y squared. So 3 times 3y squared just gives me 9y squared. And 3 goes into 3x, 1x times, okay, because 3 times 1x gives me 3x. And then 3 goes into 3 one time. Okay, so I need to have all 3 terms there, so when I distribute out, I get this back. It can also be written as 3 times 3y squared plus x plus 1. Okay, all right, so now we're going to go on to the next one, and I need to know what goes into negative 16y squared plus 96y. And I'm pretty sure that it's going to be 16. But I'm also going to factor out a negative. Usually when I'm factoring, I don't want to have a negative. I'm going to factor out a negative. So I'm going to factor out of negative 16. Well, what goes into y squared and y? Well, y does. So if I take a negative 16y out of negative 16y squared, what do I get left with? Just a y. Because remember, if I multiply those together, I should get negative 16y squared. And now if I take a negative 16 out of a negative 96, I'm going to get negative 6. So negative 16 times negative 6 is positive 96. And how do I know that? Well, I just took 96 and divided by negative 16. That's how I knew to divide by 16 in the first place. I always try the biggest number first, 16. So I took 96 and divided by 16. It went into there. If that wouldn't have worked, I would have started with the next number that went into 16 would have been 8, and then 4, and then of course 2 always goes in there. But I always try and go with the biggest numbers first. And if I take a y out of y, then it's just negative 6. So if I multiply it back, negative 16y times negative 6 gives me positive 96y. So I should get this back again. So I can always check my work, because I can always multiply this part out again and make sure I get the original problem. And then the last one, I got negative x cubed minus 100x squared, where there's no numbers that go into there. But there are variables that they both have in common. And what do they have in common? Well, that would be x squared. So, I'm going to take a negative x squared since this first number here is negative. I'm going to factor out a negative. So, let me erase that here. Okay. So, negative. If I factor out a negative x squared times what gives me negative x cubed? Well, that would be x. And then plus, because I'm taking a negative out of a negative, is a positive. Positive 100. And then if I distribute this back out, I get this. So I've got the right answer. Negative x squared times x plus 100. Okay, great job, you guys. We're going to go ahead and pause and have you do some problems like this now, and then we'll be back for the next section in just 1 second. Thank you.